The idea that love is a feeling is often what also lets us accept abuse or toxicity in relationships. One day we feel good with someone, even if they treat us really badly. But we say, oh, but it felt good that day. They were really good to me for that one moment. It doesn't matter how bad they were for the rest of the time. And so I think love being a feeling can be quite dangerous. And now people struggle being alone because people have never been given that time and space to know the value of being alone. We know that you can just turn on a TV or pull out your phone. And so it's not about being around people or not being around people. But real loneliness is I don't feel seen, heard, and understood. And so I'm encouraging people to see, hear, and understand themselves, and then try and see, hear, and understand other people as well. You know when love is over when you're becoming someone you don't want to be. You know when love is over when you are falling out of love with yourself, trying to fall in love with the other person. Love is one of those areas that we make the worst decisions and worst choices. And I'm hoping that this book helps people make better choices and better decisions in love.
Hi, this is Jane Borges, and we're here today with the Jay Shetty, who's here in Mumbai all the way from LA. Jay, as we know, is a former monk, storyteller, podcaster, and now an international best-selling author. Jay is in town to promote his just released book, 8 Rules of Love, how to find it, keep it, and let it go. Very interesting, Jay, and congratulations on this book.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's already getting a lot of reviews and has become one of the best-selling books. Jay, love, and it's interesting because we don't learn to love in our classrooms. We're not taught about it. Most of us get lucky when we're born. We have loving parents. Few of us don't. Why did you feel the need to write a book about love?
When I think about writing any book, it's really about something that I feel I can get obsessed with, something that I think deeply fascinates me, something that I feel improves the quality of our life. So I believe that there are 4 important decisions we make in life. The first one is, how do I feel about myself? And Think Like a Monk helps you answer that question. The second one is, who do I give my love to? And who do I receive love from? That's what this book is all about. The third question is, how do I live? Like, how do I make money? What do I do for work? And the fourth question is, how do I serve the world? And so I believe that the quality of your life is based on the quality of those 4 decisions. So my work is dedicated to helping people make better decisions in those areas. And I think love is one of those areas that we make the worst decisions and worst choices. And I'm hoping that this book helps people make better choices and better decisions in love.
A self-help book about love can only come from a place of love. And that's something I believe. How do you practice and allow yourself to feel love every day?
I think that there's a few ways. One is, I think everyone receives big or small compliments every day, whether it's the way you dress, the way you look, an idea you came up with, or something comes up, or even if someone mentions a quality of yours. And I think we're very bad at accepting compliments. I think most of us will be modest, or we'll do some false humility, or we'll try and push it back and we won't listen to it. And I learned something really beautiful during my time as a monk, which was every time someone is grateful to you, you get a chance to be grateful to the person who gave you that quality. So if someone says to me, Jay, I love the wisdom that you teach, then I would say, oh yes, the monks taught me that wisdom, and I would pass that on to them. And so I think one of the ways of allowing yourself to feel loved is receiving love from other people and then giving it to other people. I think another way of experiencing love is expressing it. I think a lot of us feel love is something that has to be given to you, or love is something that you're waiting for, you're wishing for, you're expecting someone else to tell you I love you or you're important to me. And actually, I feel you experience love every time you express it. If I tell someone I love them, if I create an atmosphere or an energy of love, then everyone feels love. I feel love too in that same process. And the third one, I think, is giving yourself permission to feel loved, which means believing, knowing deep inside of yourself that you're worthy of love. And that's practiced by recognizing that everyone is worthy of love. And I think often we think a few people are worthy of love and maybe not everyone else. And we have to have a more universal view towards that.
Right. Is love a feeling or is love work?
I would say love is work. When you look at the research, when you look at the studies, when you look at real love, I think we want love to be a feeling, but in reality, love is work. There is nothing in the world that sustains without work. And I think that the idea that love is a feeling is often what also lets us accept abuse or toxicity in relationships. One day we feel good with someone, even if they treat us really badly. But we say, oh, but it felt good that day. They were really good to me for that one moment. It doesn't matter how bad they were for the rest of the time. And so I think love being a feeling can be quite dangerous. But when love is commitment, when it's consistent action, when it's repeated positive behaviors, that's love. And often that doesn't feel magical, it doesn't feel cool, but it's far more fulfilling to the heart because you know it's real.
How do you work in love? How do you practice that?
I think we have to have habits for love. You have to have a way of showing the person you love every day that you love them, and you have to inform them of how they can show you they love you. Often what we do is we expect or assume the other person can read our mind and they know what we need and they should know anyway what we want. We've been dropping them hints or tips, but we don't communicate about what we truly need from someone else. So I think we have to create habits for love. Some of my favorite habits for love are making sure that me and my wife do something new together every month. Another habit for love is if we're together and we need each other's undivided attention, that the phone is put away, that we're truly present with each other. I think these are small habits that anyone can apply, but they're habits that we have to communicate about, not just expect that someone will do.
You use the Vedas to help us understand love. In fact, what you do is you employ the 4 stages of the Vedas to discuss the different stages of love, and the rules are they form the structure of your book. How did that idea come about? How did you know that the Vedas is where you could get your understanding and knowledge about love, because they don't spell it out in that way?
Yeah, during my time as a monk, I spent all my time studying Indian literature, Indian scripture, Eastern scriptures, ancient traditions. And all I did was try and look at it through the lens of the modern world, because I realized that these books were relevant, but as you said, the language may have been older. And so all I've tried to do is take these amazing frameworks and concepts and give them a new home. And the reason I do that is because I think the way the Vedas think about the world is fascinating. I think everything is so systematic and structured and intentional, and it's so thoughtful, whereas today, like you said earlier, it's become a feeling or an emotion. And so I think I actually love systematic, intentional, strategic thinking because it helps us make better decisions. I think when you're just making decisions because you feel like something, you can change your mind every day. But the Vedas give you a format and a framework in which to think.
Right at the beginning of the book, you talk about, and that's the first rule, that before one loves, they need to be able to live alone or be by themselves and learn to appreciate their solitude. Why is this process so important, Jay?
Well, I think today most people think that being single or being alone makes them unworthy, especially as we get older. As we get older, if we're still single, we think society looks down on us. We think we must be not perfect. We think we must be unattractive or unwanted. All these ideas develop. And usually when we feel lonely, we rush into a bad relationship. So studies show that when you feel lonely, you're more likely to settle for less than you deserve. You're more likely to become codependent on that person. And you're more likely to struggle to break up with them even if they're not good for you. So we make bad decisions when we feel lonely. And that's why it's better to feel strong, it's better to feel confident, because then you're going to make better decisions in relationships. See, when someone's desperate, they'll take anything. They'll allow anything. We'll allow any behavior, we'll receive any form of abuse, and we'll be okay with it. But when you have a certain level of confidence and a certain level of self-esteem, you won't allow that. Now you'll only allow goodness towards yourself.
Do you think this generation of people aren't able to understand and appreciate their loneliness as much?
I think that the generations had a hard time because they weren't trained to be alone. They were trained to always, I think that when you're growing up, if you didn't have lots of friends at school, you were the loner. If kids didn't come to your birthday party, then you were considered unpopular. Even today, if you go to a wedding, the conversation is always, you next. Where's your person? When are you getting married? And so people have had it drummed into them that they're inadequate if they're not married or they're not in a relationship. And so I don't think it's the generation's fault. It comes from a societal expectation. And now people struggle being alone because people have never been given that time and space to know the value of being alone. We know that you can just turn on a TV or pull out your phone. And even in a crowded area, studies show that 80% of us take our phone out in a crowded area just not to feel alone. And so it's not about being around people or not being around people. Being alone means you don't feel understood. It means you don't feel heard. It means you don't feel seen. Being alone doesn't mean no one's around me. That's one form of being alone. But real loneliness is I don't feel seen, heard, and understood. And so I'm encouraging people to see, hear, and understand themselves, and then try and see, hear, and understand other people as well.
That's a very interesting point that you made. Yeah. Did your early years, those 3 years that you were a monk, did that shape and change the way you saw your relationships?
Yeah, I don't think I ever spent time alone before I became a monk as well. Yeah, like how many of us out of choice spend time alone? But during that time, I spent so much time alone. And I think how it changed my relationships is that it helped me really understand who I was, which means when I meet new people, I have a value and a certain level of self-awareness to understand who are they, where do they stand, do we have similar interests, do we not, because I know who I am. But if we don't have an identity of who we are, you have no idea when you meet someone whether you're going to connect or not connect or integrate with them.
We all have ideas about love, and you speak about it in the book, that butterflies in the stomach, the chemistry, the vibe, electricity. Bollywood calls it current in their popular songs. Yeah. But what advice would you give a person who's still trying to understand whether they are in love or not? And what if they feel none of this, none of these feelings? Are they still in love?
So love has a few steps to it. So first stage is connection with yourself. The second stage is chemistry, which you feel with someone else. Chemistry is the most short-lived experience of love because chemistry is all about newness. So you only feel chemistry when something is new, because what chemistry is a chemical reaction where you're experiencing excitement and stress. That's really what chemistry is from a scientific point of view, where you have the excitement, oh, I feel attracted to that person, and then you have the stress, are they attracted to me? Or you have the excitement, I'm going to text them, and now the stress is, when are they going to text me back? And that's what the spark is, when you feel that for someone. Science shows that as you get more comfortable in someone's company, stress drops because you like being with them. So now you think that the excitement's gone, but really it's just the stress that's gone. But really that's just becoming more comfortable with them. And so second step is chemistry. But the third step and the fourth step are the most important: compatibility and character. It's not about whether you feel love or not. It's do I understand this person's character? Do I feel we're compatible? Do I know how they behave when they're tired, when they're stressed, when they're upset? Am I okay with how they behave? Do I feel cared for by this person? So I would encourage people to look more deeply at compatibility and character than I do at just chemistry, because compatibility and character is what carries a relationship long term. Chemistry is always going to go away.
And do you think that's why many relationships are failing these days? Because everyone expects this chemistry to continue?
Yeah, I think everyone expects chemistry to continue without creating chemistry. So if you want chemistry in your relationship long term, you have to constantly do new things together. you can't keep doing the same old things. So you can't keep going out for dinner and a movie and expect chemistry to remain, because you've been doing that for 7 years now, and that doesn't feel like a spark anymore because it's old. So if you want chemistry to remain, you have to constantly do new things. If you want chemistry to remain, you have to be constantly curious about your partner. Your partner is growing, you're changing, they're changing. You have to be curious and keep learning about each other. And if you want the chemistry to remain, then you have to be around people who have that chemistry as well. You have to be around other couples that are also excited, that are doing interesting, fascinating things.
One of the most amusing bits about this book is when you talk about how popular culture has defined the way we see love. And I cannot agree more. Bollywood and Hollywood, they both sold us a lot of mush. What do you think is the problem?
Well, I think that movies are a beautiful escape. I love movies and I love TV shows, but the problem is we think that the escape is reality. So movies are meant to entertain you. Movies are not meant to educate you. They're not made for that. But the problem is we take the impressions from movies and then we want them in reality. And so I think the problem is certain ideologies. So in movies, a man would always come to save the woman who is in pain, which means that a lot of women grow up believing that a man will come and save them one day. And when you grow up with that subconscious belief that a man will save me one day, that's unhealthy, because now the man feels like he has to save someone, and neither of that is true. And now that means that the woman is always in a position of weakness. That's not true either. And so I think the ideologies are the problems, not necessarily the movies. But if in the ideology a woman is broken and a man is the fixer, that's an unhealthy idea that's being portrayed.
You speak about also being influenced by romantic comedies and these fairy tale romances. Tell us about that. How did that influence you when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, I love those movies, and I think that's what I thought love looked like. And so when I first started taking my wife out on dates, when we first started seeing each other, I was always trying to do what I saw in the movies. I always thought it had to be, flowers at the door, a beautiful restaurant, like a fancy dinner, like all these sorts of things. And my wife would just tell me, like, we could have just stayed home and she could have, made a sandwich or something like that. So the point I started to realize is that we all want this fairy tale romantic love, but that's not often the real love that you find with someone. And I know people who start to think, oh, well, maybe I didn't find love in the way in the movie, so maybe I don't have real love. But that's not true. You can find love in a much more satisfying way.
You talk about Bollywood kind of, having an influence on you. A Bollywood film that ruined you. Would you remember?
Oh gosh, probably Dil To Pagal Hai. Probably that was like early days. Like that's probably like, and I love that movie. I love Shah Rukh Khan. I love Karishma Kapoor. I love Madhuri Dixit. Like they're all fantastic. So it's not. It's more just that movie made me believe in a certain type of love. And again, like I said, those movies are made for entertainment. They should be. That's what they're there for. We shouldn't be taking these imprints and impressions and trying to apply them to a real world scenario. And I think that's our mistake as an audience in doing that. And so now I know to go and enjoy a movie, have fun, take my brain aside, have a great time, but then remember that reality is going to be different.
We talk about these fairy tale romances, and yet the world was witness to one when we had, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, when they got married, and it was just close to near romantic, and you officiated their wedding.
Yes.
So when you have something like this, how do you come to terms with the reality that, you're talking about at the same time?
Well, I think that we always see the end as the fairy tale, but no one's been looking at the journey. And I think that's what movies do. Movies tell you the end. So a marriage is the end. The drive off into the sunset is the end. Happily ever after, the end. And so when you look at their journey or anyone's journey, it's a journey of growth. It's a journey of learning. It's a journey of missing each other, being separated for so many years. It's a journey of so much individual growth and collective growth. That's really the journey. But that's not what we look at. We just look at the wedding day. And so I just want to emphasize to anyone that anyone you see anyone that you think looks happy, chances are they worked really hard on something to get there. So the choice is not, do I want to be happy? The choice is, do I want to work hard? And I think that's where we make the mistake. We say, oh, I want to be happy like that. But the question is, do we want to work like that? Do we want to grow like that? Do we want to learn like that? That's really the question we should be answering.
What was it like officiating that wedding, considering you were seeing it firsthand, this love story firsthand?
It was truly an honor. It was incredible to see love up close. I think everyone should officiate a friend's wedding because you get to see what love looks like up close, which is really, really special. And yeah, I feel so happy for both of them. It was amazing.
You draw a lot of anecdotes in this book from your personal life, and Radhika is someone who comes page after page. Could you tell us about how you met Radhika, and how has that relationship, transformed your idea of love and also inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. So Radhi and I met a long time ago now. It's probably been like 14 years ago. So I first met her before I became a monk. And I tell this story with her on the first episode of my podcast, On Purpose. She's my first guest 4 years ago, and we talked about this. So I was volunteering at a local temple in London in preparation for becoming a monk 6 months later. So I was in my final year of university. And a woman my mother's age came to the temple, and I had to show her around and how to do certain services and certain rituals. And so I showed her. And then at the end of it, she said to me, I have a daughter that I'd love to introduce to spirituality. Who could I introduce her to? And I said, well, I'm going to become a monk in 6 months. So I'll introduce her to my sister. And so that was my wife's mum. That was Radhi's mum that I met all those years ago. And I introduced Radhi to my sister. I thought Radhi was absolutely beautiful, but I was focused on my path.
There was no instant connection, the butterflies.
I felt it, she didn't. If you ask her, she'll say she didn't feel anything. I did, she didn't. And then I introduced her to my sister, and her and my sister became really good friends. And then literally 3.5 years later when I came back, 4 years later when I came back after the full time, her and my sister had become really close friends. And so my sister was our matchmaker. And she was the one who told both of us about each other. And my sister's one of my closest friends. So that's how we met. Our love has not inspired this book. I wouldn't say that. I would say that this book was inspired by my own fascination for love. But I'd say that using stories from my own life with Radhi have emphasized certain stories in this book, because I think often people also think that me and Radhi are perfect for each other and that we have a perfect relationship. And I think in the book, I constantly tell stories about arguments that we have, or things that went wrong, or challenges that we've overcome, in order for people to recognize that everyone's human, everyone's going through the same thing. Like, there is no couple out there in the world that doesn't argue. There's no couple out there in the world that doesn't have challenges. There's no couple out there in the world that doesn't have to work on it all the time, including us, including everyone you see in the movies, including everyone that you watch every day on social media or TV. And so I think that's where my personal story comes into the book.
You talk about seeing your partner as a guru. Could you explain how one can kind of get to that?
Yeah, and this is a two-way thing. I don't think it's a one-way thing. And I think often we think of the word guru as someone who's controlling, someone who can be quite authoritative, someone who can judge. But a guru isn't that. A guru is a silent teacher. A guru is a subtle teacher, someone who supports you and encourages you and guides you, not someone who criticizes you and judges you. And so I think even in being a guru, because if your partner is your guru, that means we're a guru to our partner. We have to do that through compassion. We have to do that through empathy. We have to do that through non-judgment.
Thanks to online dating now, we're inundated with choices, right? The modern idea of love is slowly evolving, and words like toxic, casual, exclusive that you speak about in the book, polyamorous, they're being thrown at us. Do you think this complicates love, or is love anyway complicated?
I think that it gives us more of a deeper vocabulary around love. I think people have been experiencing toxic relationships for a long time. They just didn't have a word for it. I think people have been dealing with stressful, narcissistic people for a long time. They just didn't have a word for it. And I think sometimes it's seen as making it complex, but actually I think it makes people make healthier decisions. If you're actually aware what you're going through, you won't tolerate it. And I think a lot of people for many years tolerated a lot of abuse, a lot of pain, a lot of toxicity, which isn't fair on them. And now we have a word for it. So if you have a word for it, then people can avoid it in their life.
What do you think about online dating and these choices that we have? Does it kind of cloud the way we see love? Because I think that leads us to a process, a search that sometimes never ends.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I always look at the data. When it comes to success, online dating has the same success as meeting people through your friends. So if you're looking at it purely from a success point of view, you can't fault online dating from a data research point of view. It has the same success rate of people ending up together, whether they met online or whether they meet offline. But I think what you're saying is true, that I think a lot of us are ruining good opportunities online because we think, oh, there's plenty more fish in the sea. We think, oh, there's so many more options. If it doesn't work out with this one, there's so many more people. Oh, I was talking to this one, I got bored, let me talk to another one. Humans make bad choices when we have too much choice. That's just a fact. It's out there in every psychology book in the world. And so I think that if you are using online dating, we have to stop thinking about people like items in a shopping market, right? Which is kind of how it feels sometimes, where it's like, I'm just shopping for love. And if you're shopping for love and you keep doing returns, right? It's like, okay, I love this one, I'll return this now. It's like buying this jacket and then returning it and saying, I don't feel like it anymore. I think that's unhealthy when it comes to doing that with people. A, because we hurt people. We hurt people's emotions and feelings. B, because we also keep thinking there's someone better out there and that will be a never-ending journey. And C, because there is no perfect person. There's no person that it's going to be easy with. There's only going to be people that you're enthusiastic to make it work with. And so I would say that the constant moving on from person to person to person can be unhealthy if it's done just from boredom, because you pretty much get bored of everyone at one point. And so it's more about putting in different types of effort.
How do you know when love is over and how does one heal from it?
You know when love is over when you're becoming someone you don't want to be. You know when love is over when you are falling out of love with yourself, trying to fall in love with the other person. You know love is over when you don't feel like starting to put in energy again. So when you lose enthusiasm and energy and effort, that's when love is over on both sides. And so I find that until you've tried out everything, I think sometimes we give up too easily. I think sometimes it needs a little bit more effort, it needs a little bit more work, it needs a little bit more patience, but sometimes we give up too easily. But it's when you've exhausted all your energy, effort, and enthusiasm, that's when love is over, because you need that to keep watering it, to keep growing it.
Yeah. And you talk about loving again and again and healing. I think that is also a part of the healing process, right? Sometimes we get stuck with this idea of love and we are unable to move on. And sometimes we're tired and just exhausted and we cannot love again. How can you prepare yourself to love again? You speak about, you in the book, you mention various meditation techniques and tools. You provide us tools to help us with that. But how do you really do that? It's not very easy.
Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to learn to love each person in our life. Often we reserve love for romantic love, but we lose love in our family, we lose love in our friendship, we lose love in our workspace. And also I think love is built step by step. Love is not something that's built in one go and we just want to find someone and fall in love. And actually love is more researching and learning and understanding the other person step by step. And so the problem is if you've been hurt a few times or if you've been through a few challenges, you're just looking to fall in love again. But it doesn't happen like that. It's actually about being slow and patient. A slow, conscious, patient love is better than a fast, crazy one. But the fast, crazy one is the one that we're attracted to. So it's really about slowing down.
And what when you're stuck? You're unable to move on. How do you get out of that?
The challenge sometimes is we're trying to get out of something rather than get through something. And moving through an emotion is so important as opposed to getting over an emotion. And studies showed that when you break up with someone or someone breaks up with you, it has the same chemical reaction as detoxing from cocaine. Like that's what's happening. And so just as you would crave the drug you're addicted to, you crave the other person. And so that's a very natural thing. That's going to take a lot of time. That's going to take a lot of effort. But the point is that you're not trying to get over that feeling. You're trying to get through that feeling. So the way I make sure that you're ready for the next relationship is, have I learned the relationship lesson from the past relationship? Most of us haven't learned from the past. We're just trying to move forward. So what did I learn from my last relationship? That's the first thing. The second thing is, do I know my values and goals? If I don't know my values and goals, then I'll remain stuck. Because if I know my values and goals, then I can move forward. And thirdly, now let me go out there and figure it out. Let me put myself out there. I may or may not be ready, but those are the 3 steps.
What's your idea of perfect love? I know that you don't believe in perfect love, but if you had to define this perfect love that many of us kind of confuse and convolute, what would that be?
A perfect love is where you like the other person's personality, where you respect their values, and you are committed to helping them achieve their goals. Most of us, we don't fully know our partner's personality. We don't respect our partner's values. We want them to value what we value. And we don't even know what our partner's goals are. Or if they have goals, we don't really care about them. And so there's no chance of love in that scenario. So those are the 3 definitions.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
it was
you so
wonderful having you on our channel. Again, congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
book. And we hope to see more from you.
Yes, thank you so much. Such
Great.
a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Subscribe to Midday India. Get direct notifications on all our videos by clicking on the bell icon.